My name is Edwin Ramm, although generally I'm called Ned. This is the assignment that I've done for the Manchester 6-week course called Egypt in 6 Objects. Together with this video, I'm submitting a PDF which is the same assignment, though slightly different words, together with the sources I have used. As a theme, I've chosen the geopolitical development of Egyptian culture from a series of small chieftainships in what was to become Upper Egypt to being part of Mediterranean culture. For my first object, I've chosen this. It's a cosmetic palette. It's from the Louvre and it's object number E11052. As I say, it's a cosmetic palette from between 3300 and 3100 BC in the Naqada III period in the centuries leading up to the creation of the Egyptian state. It is about 1 foot high and decorated with wild and imagined animals. You will see on the foreside, which is the right hand side, giraffes with a palm tree and imagined animals, and on the back of it, which is a left hand image, you will see in the middle a round circular cosmetic grinding area. You'll see lions, you'll see flamingos and more imagined animals. In the Naqada I and II periods, cosmetic palettes were everyday objects. Although only found in about 15% of burials, these were not specifically for ritually appointed ones. However, in the Naqada III period, decorated palettes became ceremonial objects linked to the elite, the most famous being that of Narmer. Although still containing a cosmetic grinding area, most of them it is unused. This reflects the growing development of chieftainships in Upper Egypt, ruled by an elite, fighting each other and eventually, through war, creating larger states. The period ends with the unification of Egypt under Narmer, presumed king of Nechin. The palettes reflect the interests of the elite, in many cases hunting, as in this one, but in other cases, such as in the famous Narmer palette, war. A kingdom united. For my second object, I have chosen the base of a statue. It's from Cairo Museum and is object number JE49889. In the upper image, you will see the base of a statue with 2 feet. In the lower image, you will see the inscription which goes round the base. The item is in fact the base of a statue of King Djoser of the 3rd dynasty, that's around 2650 BC. What is interesting is the inscription, which is a contemporary record of the famous architect and vizier Imhotep giving his titles. If you look towards the left, you will see in the middle, reading right to left, his name. It starts with a reed with 2 legs, followed by an owl, and then an offering table. The titles given are uncertain and translated differently by different translators, but they indicate he was head of the king's government and he was in charge of construction. I have chosen this item because this was a time of great change, only a few centuries since unification. The functions needed for a unified state were in the process of development, including administrative structure, a calendar, and monumental buildings. Imhotep was right in there as the architect of the first stone-built public buildings, possibly ever in the world. He was responsible for the building of the first pyramid, Djoser's Step Pyramid. One of his titles was Haka-Hut-Aa. This translates as ruler of great buildings and may mean chief architect. Imhotep was remembered throughout Egyptian history as a great architect and also a great doctor. In the late period, he was revered almost as a god, and there are many representations of him. I have shown a second image, it's not one of my 6 chosen objects, mind, from a late period statuette of him. This is to give you an idea of what people thought he looked like. This is from the Petrie Museum and is object number UC8229. A mature kingdom. My third image is an object from New York Metropolitan Museum. It's object number 22.1.200. This statuette comes from the reigns of Amenemhat I or Senwosret I, that is, around about 1985 to 1911 BC, in the 12th dynasty of the Middle Kingdom. It depicts the police chief Mentuhotep and comes from his grave goods. By now, Egypt was a mature state with a long history. Before the 11th dynasty, there had been a period when Egypt's central government had failed, with power passing to local governors. However, in around about 2030 BC, Mentuhotep II had, in the words of the Metropolitan Museum, reunited Upper and Lower Egypt, setting the stage for a second great flowering of Egyptian culture. Later, stability was brought by Amenemhat I, who secured the frontiers, strengthened the central administration, founding a new capital in the centre of the country at Ititawi, and brought in the practice of co-regency, with the next king already in place on the throne. As a police chief, a central appointment, this image represents this mature, centrally organised kingdom. To boot, the name of the police chief is the same as the king who founded this period, Mentuhotep. The Empire. For my fourth object, I have chosen an object from the British Museum in London. It is object number EA 10060. As you can see, it is a papyrus. It is in fact Papyrus Harris 500. The top image shows the back of it, or verso, and the two images below show the first 3 pages of it. On these 3 pages can be found a tale known as the Taking of Joppa. It is written in hieratic, and transliterations into hieroglyphs and English translations are available. Recently, in a reading group, I helped translate it. This tells how Joppa, modern-day Jaffa, was captured during the wars of Thutmose III. He reigned from 1479 to 1473 BC. This must have been written a couple of hundred years later, when the events could be embellished, no longer being clear in people's minds. It is normally regarded as historical fiction, but whether the people at the time regarded it as history, I do not know. It is very much the earliest known story on the Ali Baba theme. The commander of the Egyptian forces takes Joppa by a ruse. He pretends to surrender and invites Prince of Joppa to his camp, where he gets Joppans drunk. The Egyptian soldiers get into baskets, which are then taken to Joppa on the pretence that they are surrendered goods. Once in Joppa, the Egyptian soldiery jump out and take the town. I have selected this object because it represents the period of empire when kings such as Thutmose III and Ramses II extended Egyptian power down into Sudan and across the Levant. There must have been many cities such as Joppa besieged by the Egyptians and taken in all kinds of manner. During the same period, other monarchs, I use this term advisedly because the Egyptian word Nesu is not gender specific like the English word king. As I say, other monarchs were busy well beyond Egypt's borders. Hatshepsut with a commercial expedition to Eritrea, and Akhenaten with political embassies to Lydia. Entry into the Mediterranean world. My fifth object is a coin. It can be found in the Border Museum in Berlin, where it is object number 8203010. This is an image of a statue of Nectanebo II, who reigned from 360 to 343 BC. This series of coins were the first coins produced in Egypt and the only ones to be inscribed in Egyptian, as he was the last native pharaoh. The reverse inscription reads Nebu Nefer, or fine gold, and the obverse has a picture of a horse. This was a period when Egypt was becoming more of a part of the external Mediterranean world. There had been buying and selling in Egypt from earliest times, but no coinage, although coins had been in use in Asia Minor for roughly 300 years by now. Commodities such as silver, gold, barley or wheat would be weighed and used as a pseudo-coinage. Indeed, even into the 20th century AD, coins would continue to be weighed for transactions in markets, so the coinage was not produced because of any domestic need. The suggestion is that they were used to pay Greek mercenaries who were employed by the Egyptian king at that time. The look of the coins remind one of the silver staters, with an image of the flying horse Pegasus, that were issued by Corinth at the same time. Egypt as part of Mediterranean civilization. My sixth object is from the Petrie Museum in London. There are actually two objects. They're objects numbers UC54444 and UC54426. The reason that there are two is that the right-hand object only is a fragment. It's a fragment of the handle, and you can see the image that I want to show better on that object than on the complete object, which is the left-hand image. These oil lamps come from the Roman period and have an image of Serapis on the handle. I have chosen these images because they show Egypt fully integrated into Mediterranean culture. Serapis was the new god, introduced by command of Ptolemy I after the Macedonian conquest of Egypt in 304 BC to help bring acceptance of Macedonian rule. He brought together features of the Egyptian gods Apis and Osiris and the Greek gods Zeus and Dionysus. In fact, his name was a merger of the names of Osiris and Apis. For an obviously man-made god, he was amazingly successful, as can be seen by his plentiful images some centuries later. As can be seen from these lamps, much Egyptian imagery is now Mediterranean rather than specifically Egyptian. Indeed, the left-hand image shows a completely Greek figure of Europa and the bull in the centre of the lamp. Thank you.